I'd like to start by thanking my honourable friend, the MP for Surrey Heath, for ensuring this important topic can be debated today. It, of course, affects people of all ages, but today I wish to focus particularly on the impact it's having on young people in my constituency of Guildford. We currently face a 24-week waiting list for a practical driving test at the Guildford Centre. That's 6 months delay before a young person can even attempt to pass their test. And as someone who, I will confess, passed third time, to be able to start that journey early is really important. For many young people, the ability to drive is a vital gateway to obtaining work or accessing education, particularly in those areas where public transport links are limited or non-existent. More than 1 in 6 job adverts in the UK explicitly requires a driving licence, and that figure rises still further in key entry-level sectors. In trades, care work, delivery services and property services, the ability to drive is not a luxury, it's a fundamental requirement. Young people are ready and willing to work, but they're being excluded, not because they lack competency or enthusiasm, but purely because they are stuck waiting months for a test. And this sits alongside a worrying regional picture. In the South East now has one of the highest rates of young people who are not in education, employment or training, recently rising to just over 13%. These are not disengaged young people. Many are actively seeking work, but are prevented from doing so because they cannot drive. The driving test backlog is not simply a frustration, it is directly contributing to regional youth unemployment. And beyond the delays themselves, the system has become dysfunctional and in some cases blatantly exploitative. One constituent had to book a test for her daughter in Erith, a place they have never visited and would never normally go, but she did it just to take a test, simply to get into the system. And I've heard from constituents they've gone to Winchester, Cardiff and beyond. It really shouldn't be a situation you have to travel miles from home to a place you have never visited, potentially staying overnight and incurring extra costs simply to take a test. Once booking that test, she tried to do what many families do, which is find an alternative slot. So at 6 a.m, she found herself in a digital queue with 60,000 others who were doing the same. This then forced her into joining an unofficial online group to exchange test slots, where she was scammed. She sent £10 by bank transfer to someone claiming to assist with securing a test, only for that individual to later demand £100. The bank later confirmed over 2 dozen similar fraudulent payments had been made that same day to that same account. Another family in my constituency spent 2 months waking at 5:30 a.m. every Monday morning to attempt to book a test. Last week, they were number 7,561 in the queue at 6 a.m. By the time the slot appeared, it vanished before they could even complete the booking. And I too have faced this as we sought a test for my son. We eventually got a test after many very frustrating, unsuccessful early mornings, but it was 9 months later in Tolworth. And on a personal note, I'm delighted to share that my son passed his test last Friday. Yeah. Another constituent passed their theory test more than 6 months ago, yet they still can't find a practical test slot before their theory test expires. We are penalising young people for the failures of the system, not their own. Within this messy and frustrating system, we're also seeing third-party resellers bulk booking and reselling test slots at inflated prices. This is exploitation of scarcity and it's completely unacceptable. While the government has acknowledged this problem, enforcement has not yet met the scale of this issue. So currently, we have a system that prevents young people from accessing work, contributing to rising NEET levels, wastes time and money, and exposes families to scams and frauds. Now, I want to acknowledge and welcome the fact the government has signalled corrective action, but it really isn't enough, and critically, it's not happening fast enough. Many of these changes are not expected to be fully implemented until 26, and I would also add respectfully that the changes around bots simply aren't working based on what I'm hearing from my constituents. Too many are still in that 6 a.m. scramble. In the meantime, waiting times remain extreme and young people continue to miss out on employment. One additional change the government has not yet committed to is extending the validity of driving theory test certificates in cases where the state cannot provide a timely practical test. Surely it cannot be right that someone who should lose their pass because the system itself has failed them. And I urge the Minister to seriously consider this and hope he will go into some detail on what the Government is thinking on this during his wind-up speech. This is not simply a transport issue. Now, some may argue that driving is a privilege and not a right, but in reality it has now become a precondition for employment, for independence, for accessing education and entering the economic world. When young people are prevented from getting a driving test, we aren't just limiting their mobility, we are limiting their futures. This is a barrier to social mobility, to employment access and to regional economic participation, and it really needs to be urgently addressed. Thank you, Madam Chair.